In a small, quiet town surrounded by green hills and winding rivers, there lived a woman named Clara. She was known for her simple ways and gentle nature. Clara didn't care much for fancy clothes or expensive jewelry. Instead, she preferred wearing plain dresses and spending her days helping others. People in the town admired her kindness, but some also whispered about how ordinary she seemed compared to her husband, Michael. Michael wasn't just any man. He was a billionaire who had built his fortune from scratch. Yet despite their differences, Clara and Michael shared a deep love and respect for each other. On this particular day, Clara decided to take a break from her usual routine. She wanted to enjoy a peaceful lunch at an upscale restaurant in the city. It wasn't something she did often, but today felt special. She chose her favorite blue dress, one that hugged her frame modestly, and paired it with a pair of comfortable flats. She didn't bother with makeup or accessories, as she never felt the need to impress anyone. With a small purse in hand, she drove to the restaurant, feeling excited about treating herself to a rare afternoon of luxury. The restaurant was located in the heart of the city, a place where the rich and famous gathered to dine. Its glass doors sparkled under the sunlight, and the faint sound of clinking glasses and soft music drifted outside. As Clara stepped inside, she noticed the grand chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and the plush chairs arranged neatly around polished tables. Everything about the place screamed elegance, and for a moment Clara felt out of place. But she quickly reminded herself that everyone deserved to enjoy good food, no matter who they were. A young hostess greeted Clara with a polite smile, though her eyes flickered with curiosity. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, glancing down at her clipboard. Clara shook her head. "No, I don't," she replied softly. "But I'd like to eat here if there's space." The hostess hesitated for a second before nodding and leading Clara to a table near the window. It wasn't the best seat in the house, but it offered a nice view of the bustling street outside. Clara thanked her and sat down, taking in the atmosphere. As she opened the menu, Clara couldn't help but notice the stares from the staff and other diners. Some looked at her with confusion, while others seemed amused by her simplicity. She tried not to let it bother her, reminding herself that she was here to enjoy a meal, not to seek approval. Still, the whispers reached her ears. "Who is she?" one waiter murmured to another. "She doesn't look like she belongs here," came the reply. Clara pretended not to hear, focusing instead on choosing what to order. When the waiter finally approached her table, he seemed distracted and impatient. "Are you ready to order?" he asked curtly, pen poised over his notepad. Clara nodded and placed her order, her voice calm and steady. The waiter scribbled it down without making eye contact and hurried away, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. She sighed quietly, wondering why people felt the need to judge so quickly. She had done nothing wrong, yet she could feel the weight of their disapproval pressing down on her. Minutes passed and Clara began to relax. She sipped her water and watched the cars drive by outside. For a brief moment, she forgot about the judgmental gazes and allowed herself to enjoy the peaceful ambiance. But her moment of peace was short-lived. A tall, well-dressed man entered the restaurant, flanked by two assistants. He scanned the room with an air of authority, his eyes landing on Clara's table. Without hesitation, he strode over and addressed the manager, pointing at Clara's spot. "I want that table," he declared loudly, his tone leaving no room for argument. The manager, a nervous-looking man in a suit, rushed over to Clara. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we need this table for another guest," he said, avoiding her gaze. Clara blinked in surprise. "But I'm already seated here," she protested gently. "Can't you find another table for him?" The manager shifted uncomfortably, glancing back at the impatient businessman. "I'm afraid not," he muttered. "Please understand." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She knew she hadn't done anything to deserve such treatment, yet she couldn't argue with the manager's decision. Slowly, she gathered her belongings and stood up, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. As she walked toward the exit, she could feel the eyes of everyone in the room following her. Some looked sympathetic, while others appeared smug, as if they had expected this outcome all along. Clara kept her head high, refusing to let them see how much their actions hurt her. Once outside, Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. The cool breeze brushed against her face, offering a small comfort. She leaned against the wall of the restaurant, clutching her purse tightly. Her mind raced with questions. Why had they treated her so poorly? Was it because of how she dressed? Or was it simply because she didn't fit into their idea of wealth and status? Whatever the reason, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being dismissed and humiliated. Just as tears threatened to spill from her eyes, the sound of screeching tires caught her attention. A sleek black Porsche pulled up beside her, its engine purring softly. Clara blinked in surprise as the driver stepped out. It was Michael, her husband. Dressed in a sharp suit and exuding confidence, he looked every bit the successful businessman he was. His expression softened when he saw Clara standing there, clearly upset. "Clara," he called out, concern evident in his voice. "What's going on?" Clara hesitated, unsure of how to explain what had happened. But seeing Michael's reassuring presence gave her strength. Taking a deep breath, she began to recount the events inside the restaurant, the judgmental stares, the rude comments, and finally, being forced to leave her table. As she spoke, Michael's expression darkened. His usually calm demeanor gave way to anger, though he kept his voice steady. "Let me handle this," he said firmly, his eyes locked onto hers. Clara nodded, trusting him completely. Without another word, Michael guided Clara back toward the entrance of the restaurant. The same staff members who had dismissed her earlier now scrambled to greet him, recognizing him instantly. Their smiles were wide, their bows exaggerated. "Mr. Thompson, what a pleasure to see you here," the manager exclaimed, bowing deeply. Michael ignored their attempts at flattery and walked straight to the center of the dining area. All eyes turned to him, and the room fell silent. Clara stayed close behind, watching as her husband prepared to confront those who had wronged her. Michael's voice rang out, clear and commanding, cutting through the tension in the air. "I understand that my wife was asked to leave her table earlier today," he began, his tone icy. The manager paled, realizing the gravity of the situation. The staff exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to say. Michael continued, his words sharp and deliberate. "You judged her based on her appearance, assuming she didn't belong here. But let me remind you, this is a public establishment, not a private club. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." The room was so quiet that even the clinking of silverware stopped. The businessman who had demanded Clara's table shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly aware of the scrutiny directed at him. Michael didn't stop there. He turned to address the other diners, many of whom had witnessed the scene unfold. "We live in a world where people are quick to judge based on outward appearances," he said, his voice softer now but still powerful. "But true worth comes from within. My wife may not wear designer clothes or flaunt expensive accessories, but her kindness and integrity far outweigh any material possessions." His words resonated deeply with those present. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked ashamed of their earlier behavior. The manager stammered apologies, offering free meals and discounts, but Michael waved them off. "This isn't about money," he said sternly. "It's about learning to treat everyone equally." With that, he took Clara's hand and led her out of the restaurant, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. Outside, Clara felt a mix of emotions: relief, gratitude, and pride. She looked up at Michael, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Michael smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You never have to thank me for standing by your side," he replied. "Now let's go somewhere where you'll truly be appreciated." Hand in hand, they walked away, leaving the restaurant and its lessons behind. After leaving the restaurant, Michael guided Clara toward a cozy cafe located just a few blocks away. The contrast between the two places couldn't have been starker. While the restaurant had been all about glitz and exclusivity, this little cafe radiated warmth and charm. Its walls were painted a soft yellow, adorned with paintings of flowers and landscapes. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of baked goods. A small sign above the door read, "Welcome home." Clara hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, still shaken by the events of the day. But as soon as they entered, she felt a wave of comfort wash over her. The staff greeted them with genuine smiles, and the atmosphere was relaxed and inviting. Michael chose a quiet corner table for them, far from the chatter of other patrons. He pulled out a chair for Clara and waited until she sat down before taking his own seat. His presence alone seemed to calm her nerves, but he could see that she was still processing what had happened. "Are you okay?" Michael asked gently, leaning forward so he could look into her eyes. Clara nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the menu. "I'm fine," she replied softly. "It's just, I didn't think something like that would happen. Not here." Her voice trailed off, and she stared at the table, avoiding his gaze. Michael reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said firmly. "Those people were wrong, not you." Clara managed a weak smile, grateful for his reassurance. They ordered their food, a rich slice of chocolate cake for Clara and a savory quiche for Michael, and spent the next few minutes in silence. The cafe was filled with the sounds of laughter and light conversation, creating a soothing backdrop to their meal. For the first time that day, Clara began to feel at ease. She glanced around the room, noticing how different this place felt compared to the restaurant. Here, no one cared about appearances or status. Everyone was simply enjoying themselves. As they ate, Michael decided to change the subject, steering the conversation toward lighter topics. "Do you remember our trip to Italy last year?" he asked, a twinkle in his eye. Clara's face lit up instantly. "Of course," she exclaimed, her voice brighter now. "That tiny pasta shop we found in Florence, it was magical." Michael chuckled, nodding in agreement. "And the owner insisted we stay for dessert even though we told him we were full." They both laughed at the memory, recalling how the elderly man had refused to take no for an answer, piling plates of tiramisu and cannoli onto their table. Laughter drew curious glances from nearby tables, but neither of them noticed. For a while they forgot about the incident at the restaurant, lost in the joy of reminiscing about their travels. Clara's earlier sadness faded, replaced by a sense of gratitude for the life they shared. Despite their differences, his wealth and her simplicity, they complemented each other perfectly. Michael admired Clara's humility and kindness, while Clara appreciated his ambition and loyalty. When their plates were cleared away, Michael leaned back in his chair, studying Clara thoughtfully. "You know," he began, "what happened today reminded me of something important." Clara tilted her head, curious. "What's that?" she asked. Michael smiled, his expression serious yet tender. "It reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place. You don't care about material things or trying to impress anyone. You're exactly who you are, and that's more than enough for me." Clara felt her heart swell with emotion. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand, unable to find the words to express how much his statement meant to her. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you." Michael shook his head. "Don't thank me," he replied. "You've always been extraordinary, Clara. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The rest of their afternoon passed pleasantly, with Michael and Clara chatting about everything from future travel plans to their favorite books. By the time they left the cafe, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city streets. As they walked back to the car, Clara felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The humiliation she had experienced earlier was still fresh in her mind, but it no longer consumed her. She realized that the opinions of strangers didn't define her worth, not when she had someone like Michael by her side. Back at home, Clara settled into her favorite armchair, sipping a cup of tea while Michael worked on his laptop at the dining table. Though they were physically apart, there was an unspoken connection between them, a bond that years of marriage had strengthened. Clara reflected on the day's events, replaying Michael's words in her mind. She knew he was right. Her value wasn't tied to her appearance or social standing. Still, the experience at the restaurant lingered, prompting her to think about broader issues. That evening, Clara picked up her phone and scrolled through social media, half expecting to see posts about the incident. To her surprise, there were none. It seemed the story hadn't spread beyond the restaurant itself. But as she browsed further, she came across articles and videos discussing classism and discrimination. One particular video caught her attention. It featured interviews with people who had faced similar situations, being judged based on their clothes, accents, or perceived wealth. Clara watched intently, feeling a mix of anger and empathy. She realized that what had happened to her wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern. The realization troubled her, but it also inspired her. Clara decided to write about her experience, hoping to shed light on the issue. She opened her laptop and began typing, pouring her thoughts onto the screen. At first, she wrote about the restaurant, the whispers, the stares, the unfairness of being kicked out. Then, she shifted her focus to the bigger picture, discussing how society often equates wealth with worthiness. She ended her piece with a message of hope, encouraging readers to look beyond appearances and treat everyone with kindness and respect. By the time she finished writing, it was late at night. Clara reread her words, making minor edits before publishing the post online. She didn't expect much to come of it, but she felt a sense of satisfaction knowing she had spoken her truth. Little did she know, her story would resonate with thousands of people, sparking conversations and inspiring change. The next morning, Clara woke up to a flurry of notifications on her phone. Her post had gone viral, shared by countless users, across various platforms. People praised her honesty and courage, sharing their own stories of discrimination and offering words of support. Journalists reached out, asking for interviews, and local news stations requested permission to feature her article. Clara was overwhelmed but touched by the response. She hadn't intended to become an advocate, but she recognized the opportunity to make a difference. Michael joined her in the living room, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Looks like you've started something big," he said with a proud smile. Clara nodded, still processing the overnight reaction. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she admitted, "but maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it'll help people think twice before judging others." Michael handed her a cup of coffee and kissed her forehead. "That's my Clara," he said warmly, always finding ways to turn pain into purpose. Over the following days, Clara embraced her newfound role as a voice against discrimination. She gave interviews, wrote follow-up articles, and even spoke at community events. Her story became a catalyst for discussions about classism, respect, and equality. Through it all, Michael remained her biggest supporter, cheering her on every step of the way. Together, they proved that true strength lies not in wealth or power, but in compassion and integrity. Though the incident at the restaurant had been painful, it ultimately led to something beautiful. Clara learned that setbacks can sometimes lead to growth, and that standing up for oneself is a powerful act of self-respect. And as she stood alongside Michael, facing the world with confidence and grace, she knew they were stronger together than ever before. The days following Clara's viral post were a whirlwind of activity. Messages poured in from strangers all over the world, each one sharing their own experiences of being judged or mistreated because of their appearance, background, or perceived status. Some stories were heartbreaking, people recounting how they had been turned away from jobs, denied service at stores, or excluded from social circles simply because they didn't fit someone else's idea of acceptable. Others were uplifting, filled with gratitude for Clara's courage to speak out and inspire change. Clara spent hours reading through the comments and messages, her heart swelling with emotion. She felt a deep connection to these individuals, knowing firsthand how it felt to be dismissed or humiliated. At the same time, she couldn't help but feel frustrated by how widespread the problem was. It wasn't just one rude manager or snobbish diner. It was a pattern, a mindset that needed to shift. The more she read, the more determined she became to use her platform to create awareness and spark meaningful conversations. Michael noticed the toll this was taking on Clara. Though she tried to stay positive, he could see the exhaustion in her eyes as she scrolled through endless stories late into the night. One evening, after another long day of responding to messages and giving interviews, Michael gently took her laptop away. "You've done enough for today," he said firmly, but kindly. "It's important to take care of yourself too." Clara sighed, leaning back against the couch. "I know you're right," she admitted, rubbing her temples. "But I can't stop thinking about all those people who are still dealing with this every single day. What if my words aren't enough? What if nothing changes?" Michael sat down beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he reminded her. "And it doesn't rest solely on your shoulders. You've already made a huge impact by speaking up. Now it's up to others to listen and act, but you can't carry the weight of the entire world. You'll burn yourself out." His words struck a chord with Clara. She realized that while she wanted to fight for justice, she also needed to pace herself. Taking a break didn't mean giving up. It meant recharging so she could continue making a difference. With Michael's encouragement, she decided to step back from her phone and computer for a few hours each day to focus on self-care. Sometimes they would go for long walks together, breathing in the fresh air and enjoying the quiet moments. Other times, Clara would lose herself in painting, a hobby she had neglected for years, or bake cookies while listening to her favorite music. Despite these breaks, the momentum around Clara's story continued to grow. Local newspapers picked up her article, turning it into front-page news. Social media influencers shared her message, amplifying its reach even further. Soon, invitations began arriving for Clara to speak at events hosted by schools, community centers, and even corporate offices. At first, the thought of public speaking terrified her. She had always preferred staying behind the scenes, letting her actions speak louder than her words. But Michael encouraged her to embrace the opportunity. "You have a gift," he told her one morning as they prepared for her first speaking engagement. "People connect with your honesty and vulnerability. Don't let fear hold you back from sharing that with them." Clara nodded, though her hands trembled as she practiced her speech. She wrote down key points, focusing on her personal experience and the lessons she had learned along the way. When the day finally arrived, she stood nervously behind the podium, scanning the room filled with eager faces. Her voice wavered at first, but as she spoke, she found her rhythm. She talked about the restaurant incident, her initial feelings of shame, and how Michael's support had helped her regain her confidence. Then, she shifted to the broader issue of discrimination, urging the audience to challenge their own biases and treat everyone with kindness and respect. By the end of her speech, the room erupted in applause. People lined up to thank her, many saying her words had resonated deeply with them. One woman approached Clara with tears in her eyes, thanking her for putting into words what she had struggled to articulate for years. Another man shook her hand firmly, promising to implement changes within his company to promote inclusivity. These interactions left Clara feeling both humbled and empowered. As weeks turned into months, Clara became a familiar face in discussions about equality and respect. She collaborated with organizations dedicated to fighting classism and discrimination, lending her voice to campaigns aimed at educating the public. Schools invited her to talk to students about empathy and acceptance, while businesses sought her advice on creating more inclusive environments. Through it all, Michael remained steadfastly by her side, attending events, offering feedback, and celebrating her successes. Their partnership grew stronger during this time. While Clara focused on advocacy work, Michael used his influence to push for systemic change. He reached out to fellow business leaders, encouraging them to adopt policies that prioritize diversity and fairness. Together, they formed a powerful team, combining Clara's grassroots efforts with Michael's resources and connections. Their shared mission brought them closer than ever before, reinforcing the love and respect they had for each other. 1. Evening. After returning home from yet another event, Clara sat on the porch with Michael, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. "Do you ever wonder where all this will lead?" she asked softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Michael glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. Not really, he replied. What matters is that we're doing something meaningful. Whether it leads to big changes or small ones, we're planting seeds. And someday someone will reap the benefits of what we've started. Clara smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. His optimism always managed to lift her spirits even on days when progress felt slow. They stayed like that for a while, lost in their thoughts and the peacefulness of the moment. Despite the challenges they faced, they knew they were on the right path. The next morning, Clara received an email from a young girl named Lily. Attached to the message was a drawing of two figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. In simple, childlike handwriting, Lily wrote, "Thank you for teaching me that everyone deserves to be treated nicely, no matter what they look like. I want to be like you when I grow up." Clara stared at the image, tears welling up in her eyes. She printed out the drawing and pinned it to the fridge, where it served as a daily reminder of why she kept going. That afternoon, Clara visited a local school to give a presentation to a group of middle schoolers. As she walked into the classroom, she was greeted by curious faces and whispers of excitement. She began her talk by showing Lily's drawing and explaining its significance. "This is why I do what I do," she told the students. "Because every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change someone's life, including your own." Her words resonated with the children, sparking lively discussions about fairness and compassion. By the end of the session, several students raised their hands, eager to share ideas for spreading kindness in their community. One boy suggested organizing a clothing drive for families in need, while another proposed starting a club to combat bullying at school. Clara left the classroom feeling hopeful, inspired by the enthusiasm and creativity of the younger generation. Back at home, Clara reflected on how far she had come since that fateful day at the restaurant. What had started as a painful experience had transformed into a journey of growth, connection, and purpose. She knew there was still much work to be done, but she no longer felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. Instead, she embraced it one step at a time, with Michael by her side and the support of countless others who believed in her mission. Together, they proved that even the simplest acts of standing up for oneself, and for others, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways they never imagined. And as Clara looked toward the future, she did so with hope, determination, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of humanity. As the months went by, Clara's efforts to promote kindness and equality began to take on a life of their own. What had started as a personal story shared online had grown into a movement that inspired people from all walks of life. Her name became synonymous with compassion and resilience, and she found herself invited to speak at conferences, panel discussions, and even television shows. Each opportunity allowed her to reach new audiences, spreading her message further than she ever thought possible. One day, Clara received an invitation to participate in a national talk show known for addressing important social issues. At first, she hesitated. The idea of appearing on live television made her nervous, but Michael encouraged her to see it as another chance to make a difference. "You've already touched so many lives," he reminded her. "Imagine how many more you could reach through this platform." With his support, Clara agreed to go ahead with the appearance. The morning of the show, Clara woke up early, her stomach fluttering with nerves. She carefully chose an outfit, a simple yet elegant dress that reflected her personality, and spent extra time practicing what she wanted to say. Michael accompanied her to the studio, holding her hand tightly as they walked through the bustling backstage area. When they reached the green room, Clara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "You'll do great," Michael whispered, giving her a reassuring smile. "Just be yourself." When it was time to go on stage, Clara stepped out under the bright lights, greeted by applause from the audience. The host welcomed her warmly, introducing her as someone who had turned a painful experience into a powerful call for change. As Clara settled into her seat, she glanced at the crowd and felt a surge of determination. This was her moment to share her story with millions of viewers across the country. The conversation began with the host asking Clara about the incident at the restaurant. Clara recounted the events honestly, describing how she had been treated unfairly because of her appearance. She spoke about the humiliation she had felt and how Michael's unwavering support had helped her regain her confidence. But she didn't stop there. Clara shifted the focus to the bigger picture, discussing how societal biases often lead to discrimination and exclusion. She emphasized the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or outward appearance. The audience listened intently, nodding along as Clara spoke. When the host opened the floor for questions, the response was overwhelming. People called in from different parts of the country, sharing their own stories of being judged or excluded. One caller, a single mother struggling to provide for her children, tearfully thanked Clara for reminding her that her worth wasn't defined by her financial situation. Another caller, a college student working multiple jobs to pay for tuition, expressed gratitude for Clara's message of perseverance and self-worth. By the end of the segment, the atmosphere in the studio was electric. The host concluded the interview by thanking Clara for her courage and wisdom, calling her an inspiration to everyone watching. As Clara left the stage, she was met with hugs and congratulations from the production crew. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that her words had resonated with so many people. Back home, the impact of the interview became evident almost immediately. Social media lit up with posts praising Clara's message, and calls poured in from organizations eager to collaborate with her. A nonprofit group dedicated to fighting classism reached out, inviting Clara to join their advisory board. A school district asked if she would help develop a curriculum focused on teaching empathy and inclusion to students. Even local businesses sought her advice on creating workplaces that valued diversity and fairness. Clara embraced these opportunities wholeheartedly, but she also remained grounded. She knew that true change required consistent effort, not just fleeting attention. To ensure she stayed focused, she set aside specific days each week for advocacy work, balancing her schedule with time for rest and reflection. Michael continued to play a vital role in her journey, offering guidance and encouragement whenever she needed it. Together, they brainstormed ideas for projects that combined Clara's grassroots approach with Michael's business acumen. 1. Such project involved launching a community initiative called Kindness Starts Here. The program aimed to bring people together through workshops, storytelling sessions, and volunteer activities. Clara envisioned it as a way to foster understanding and connection among individuals from diverse backgrounds. She partnered with local leaders, educators, and activists to design events that encouraged dialogue and collaboration. The first workshop took place in a community center, drawing a diverse crowd of participants eager to learn and engage. During the workshop, Clara facilitated discussions about overcoming biases and building bridges between communities. She shared anecdotes from her own experiences, encouraging others to do the same. Participants exchanged stories, laughed, and sometimes cried as they realized how much they had in common despite their differences. By the end of the session, several attendees pledged to start similar initiatives in their own neighborhoods, ensuring the ripple effect of kindness continued to spread. Word of the program's success quickly spread, attracting attention from neighboring towns and cities. Requests poured in for Clara to expand Kindness Starts Here to other regions. While the demand was exciting, it also presented challenges. Clara worried about maintaining the authenticity of the program as it grew larger. She didn't want it to become just another trendy campaign. She wanted it to remain deeply rooted in genuine human connection. To address this concern, Clara decided to involve local volunteers in every step of the process. She believed that empowering communities to take ownership of the initiative would keep it authentic and sustainable. With Michael's help, she developed training materials and resources to guide volunteers in organizing their own workshops. They also created an online platform where participants could share their experiences, ask questions, and connect with one another. As Kindness Starts Here gained momentum, Clara noticed subtle shifts in the attitudes of those around her. Strangers approached her in grocery stores and coffee shops, thanking her for inspiring them to treat others with more compassion. Friends and family members confided in her, admitting that her story had made them reflect on their own biases. Even the staff at the restaurant where she had been mistreated reached out, apologizing once again and expressing their desire to improve their customer service practices. These small victories fueled Clara's determination to keep pushing forward. She understood that systemic change wouldn't happen overnight, but she was content knowing that she was contributing to a larger movement. Every person who embraced her message of kindness and equality was a step closer to a better world. 1. Evening after wrapping up a particularly successful workshop, Clara returned home feeling exhausted but fulfilled. Michael greeted her with a warm hug, sensing the mix of emotions she carried. "How did it go?" he asked, handing her a cup of tea. Clara smiled, sinking into the couch beside him. "It went well," she replied. "People are really starting to get it. They're seeing the value in treating everyone with respect no matter who they are." Michael nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "That's because you've shown them the way," he said. "You've given them something to believe in." Clara shook her head modestly. "I'm just one person," she said. "This isn't about me. It's about all of us working together." Their conversation drifted to lighter topics, allowing Clara to unwind after a long day. They talked about future plans, including a vacation they had been meaning to take. Though Clara's advocacy work kept her busy, she and Michael had promised themselves regular breaks to recharge and enjoy life outside of their mission. These moments of normalcy were essential, reminding them of the joy and beauty in everyday living. Later that night, as Clara lay in bed, she thought about how far she had come since the day at the restaurant. What had initially seemed like a devastating experience had transformed into a catalyst for growth and purpose. She realized that pain, when handled with grace and courage, could lead to profound transformation, not just for oneself, but for others as well. With a contented sigh, Clara closed her eyes, grateful for the journey she was on. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she faced them with hope and determination. As long as she had Michael by her side and the support of countless individuals who believed in her cause, she felt ready to tackle anything. Together, they were proving that even the simplest acts of kindness could create waves of change, touching hearts and transforming lives in ways they never imagined. As Clara's influence continued to grow, she found herself at the center of a movement that was spreading far beyond her small town. People from all over the country were taking notice of her message, and many were inspired to take action in their own communities. Schools began incorporating lessons on empathy and equality into their curriculums. Businesses started implementing policies to ensure fair treatment for employees and customers alike, and local governments launched campaigns to promote inclusivity. It was clear that Clara's story had struck a chord with people who were hungry for change. One day, Clara received an unexpected letter in the mail. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting on the front was neat and careful. When she opened it, she discovered a heartfelt note from a woman named Sarah, who lived in a neighboring state. Sarah wrote about how Clara's words had given her the courage to leave an abusive relationship. "Your story reminded me that I deserve respect," Sarah explained. "It made me realize I didn't have to stay in a situation where I was treated as less than human." Enclosed with the letter was a photograph of Sarah smiling brightly with her 2 young children, standing in front of their new home. Clara held the photo tightly, tears streaming down her face. She showed it to Michael when he came home later that evening. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This is why we're doing this, because it matters to real people living real lives." Michael wrapped his arms around her, sharing in her joy. "You've changed so many lives," he said softly, "and you'll keep changing more." The letter from Sarah wasn't the only one Clara received. Her mailbox soon overflowed with notes, drawings, and photographs from people whose lives had been touched by her work. A teenager wrote about how Clara's advocacy had inspired him to stand up against bullying at his school. An elderly man shared how her message had encouraged him to reconnect with estranged family members after years of silence. Each story was unique, yet they all carried the same underlying theme. Clara's efforts were making a tangible difference. With so much positive feedback pouring in, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. However, she also recognized the importance of staying grounded. She often reminded herself that she was just one person among many fighting for a better world. To honor that belief, she decided to highlight the stories of others who were working tirelessly to create change in their own ways. She began hosting a series of online interviews called Voices of Hope, featuring activists, teachers, parents, and everyday heroes who were making an impact in their communities. The first episode featured a teacher named Rachel, who had started a program to provide free meals for students in need. Rachel spoke passionately about the challenges her students faced and how small acts of kindness, like ensuring they had enough to eat, could make a big difference in their lives. The second episode showcased a group of teenagers who had organized a citywide cleanup initiative, turning neglected parks into vibrant spaces for families to enjoy. Each interview ended with a call to action, encouraging viewers to find ways to contribute to their own communities. Voices of Hope quickly gained popularity, drawing thousands of viewers each week. Clara loved hearing the diverse perspectives of her guests and seeing how their stories resonated with audiences. More importantly, the series reinforced the idea that everyone had the power to make a difference, no matter how small their actions might seem. Clara often closed each episode by saying, "Change doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to all of us. Together we can build a kinder, fairer world." Despite her growing success, Clara never forgot her roots. She still spent time volunteering at local shelters, helping organize food drives and mentoring young women who looked up to her. These activities kept her connected to the community and reminded her of why she had started this journey in the first place. She also made it a point to visit schools regularly, speaking to students about the importance of treating others with kindness and standing up for what is right. During one such visit, Clara met a shy girl named Emily, who sat quietly in the back of the classroom. After the presentation, Emily approached Clara hesitantly, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her hands. "I wanted to thank you," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Your story helped me believe in myself." She handed Clara the paper, which turned out to be a poem Emily had written about overcoming fear and finding strength. Clara read it carefully, her heart swelling with pride. "That's beautiful, Emily," Clara said, giving the girl a warm smile. "Never stop believing in yourself. You have so much to offer the world." Emily beamed, clearly emboldened by Clara's encouragement. Moments like these reminded Clara that her work wasn't just about addressing systemic issues. It was also about empowering individuals to see their own worth. As the months passed, Clara noticed subtle changes in the way people interacted with her. Strangers greeted her warmly in public, often stopping to express their gratitude or share how her message had impacted their lives. Even the staff at the upscale restaurant where she had been mistreated reached out again, inviting her to attend a special event they were hosting to celebrate diversity and inclusion. Though Clara initially hesitated, she ultimately accepted the invitation, viewing it as an opportunity to witness firsthand the progress they had made. The event took place in the same restaurant where Clara had once been humiliated. Walking through its doors brought back memories, but this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Staff members welcomed her with genuine smiles, and the manager personally apologized once more, explaining the steps they had taken to improve their customer service practices. Throughout the evening, speakers shared inspiring stories about breaking down barriers and fostering understanding. Clara delivered a short speech, emphasizing the importance of learning from mistakes and striving for continuous improvement. By the end of the night, Clara felt a deep sense of closure. She realized that while the past couldn't be erased, it could serve as a foundation for growth and transformation. The restaurant's efforts to change demonstrated that even institutions rooted in exclusivity could evolve into spaces of inclusivity if they were willing to listen and adapt. Back home, Clara reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful day. What had begun as a painful experience had blossomed into a journey of purpose and connection. She marveled at how one moment of injustice had sparked a chain reaction, leading to meaningful conversations, relationships, and actions. Yet she knew the work was far from over. There would always be more voices to amplify, more hearts to touch, and more minds to open. Michael joined her on the porch, bringing 2 cups of tea. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle above. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Michael asked after a while. Clara smiled, sipping her tea thoughtfully. "Always," she replied. "But I try not to focus too much on the future. Right now I'm just grateful for today, and for the chance to keep making a difference." Michael nodded, squeezing her hand affectionately. "That's my Clara," he said with a chuckle. "Always looking ahead, always finding ways to help others." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace. Together they had weathered storms and celebrated victories, proving that love and partnership could fuel incredible change. As the weeks turned into months, Clara continued to expand her reach, collaborating with organizations and individuals dedicated to creating a fairer, kinder world. She traveled to different cities, meeting passionate advocates and learning from their experiences. Along the way, she encountered setbacks and challenges, but she faced them with resilience, knowing that every obstacle was an opportunity to grow stronger. Through it all, Clara remained true to herself, a simple woman with a big heart and an unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity. Her journey had taught her that change was possible, but it required patience, persistence, and collective effort. And as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, she knew the world would continue moving toward a brighter, more inclusive future. As the years passed, Clara's influence continued to grow, but she remained deeply connected to the values that had guided her from the beginning. Her story had become a beacon of hope for countless people, yet she never allowed herself to forget where she came from or the lessons she had learned along the way. She knew that staying grounded was essential, not just for her own well-being, but to ensure that her message remained authentic and relatable. One crisp autumn morning, Clara woke up earlier than usual, feeling a sense of anticipation. Today was the day of the annual Kindness Festival, an event she and Michael had helped organize in their hometown. What had started as a small gathering of friends and neighbors had grown into a major community celebration, drawing visitors from across the region. The festival featured workshops, art exhibits, music performances, and volunteer opportunities, all centered around themes of empathy, equality, and connection. Clara spent the morning helping set up booths and greeting volunteers who had come to lend a hand. Despite the chilly air, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Children ran around laughing, while adults chatted enthusiastically about the activities planned for the day. Clara couldn't help but smile as she watched families come together, united by a shared desire to make the world a better place. By midday, the festival was in full swing. Clara stood on a small stage at the center of the park, addressing the crowd gathered before her. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice warm and inviting. "This festival isn't just about celebrating kindness, it's about reminding ourselves that we all have the power to create change. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, can ripple outward and touch lives in ways we may never fully understand." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement. After her speech, Clara wandered through the festival grounds, stopping to chat with attendees and listen to their stories. A young boy proudly showed her a painting he had created during one of the art workshops, explaining how it represented friendship and acceptance. An elderly woman thanked Clara for inspiring her to start volunteering at a local shelter. Each interaction filled Clara with gratitude, reinforcing her belief in the goodness of humanity. Later that afternoon, Clara joined Michael at a booth dedicated to storytelling. People were invited to share personal experiences of overcoming adversity or spreading kindness in their communities. As Clara listened to the stories, she was struck by the diversity of backgrounds and perspectives represented. There was a man who had forgiven his childhood bully, a teacher who had gone above and beyond to support struggling students, and a teenager who had organized a fundraiser for a classmate battling illness. Each story was a testament to the resilience and compassion that existed within people, waiting to be nurtured and celebrated. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Clara took a moment to step back and observe the scene around her. Families were dancing to live music, children were playing games, and strangers were striking up conversations, It was a beautiful reminder of what could happen when people came together with a shared purpose. Michael found her standing near the edge of the crowd, her face illuminated by the soft light of string lanterns hanging overhead. "You did it," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "This is exactly what you wanted, a space where people can connect and inspire each other." Clara leaned into him, her heart swelling with emotion. "We did it," she corrected gently. "None of this would have been possible without you, and everyone else who believed in this vision." Michael smiled, kissing the top of her head. "You've always been the heart of this movement," he replied, "but I'm proud to stand beside you every step of the way." They stood there for a while, taking in the sights and sounds of the festival, savoring the sense of unity and joy that filled the air. The following weeks brought new opportunities for Clara to expand her reach. Invitations poured in from international organizations eager to collaborate with her. One group, based in Europe, reached out to discuss ways they could adapt "Kindness Starts Here" for global audiences. Another organization, focused on combating poverty, asked Clara to serve as a keynote speaker at their upcoming summit. Though these offers were exciting, Clara approached them with caution, ensuring that any partnerships aligned with her core values and mission. At the same time, she continued to prioritize her local community. She worked closely with schools to develop programs that taught students about empathy and inclusion, using storytelling and interactive activities to engage young minds. She also partnered with businesses to implement policies that promoted fairness and respect in the workplace. Clara believed that lasting change required effort at every level, from individuals to institutions, and she was determined to address both. One evening, after returning home from a particularly busy day, Clara sat down to write in her journal. Writing had always been a form of self-reflection for her, a way to process her thoughts and emotions. That night she wrote about the journey she had been on, the challenges she had faced, the victories she had celebrated, and the lessons she had learned. She reflected on how far she had come since the day she had been mistreated at the restaurant, marveling at how one painful experience had led to so much growth and transformation. As she closed her journal, Clara glanced at the photograph of Sarah and her children, still pinned to the fridge. It served as a constant reminder of why she kept going, even when the road felt long and difficult. She thought about all the other stories she had heard, stories of courage, resilience, and hope, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her work wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about making a difference, one person at a time. Months later, Clara received news that brought tears to her eyes. The nonprofit organization she had collaborated with early in her journey had nominated her for a prestigious humanitarian award. When the announcement was made public, Clara was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from friends, family, and strangers alike. Though she didn't consider herself deserving of such an honor, she accepted the award humbly, viewing it as recognition not just for her efforts, but for the collective impact of everyone involved in the movement. At the awards ceremony, Clara delivered a heartfelt acceptance speech. "This award doesn't belong to me," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "It belongs to every person who has ever stood up against injustice, who has shown kindness when it was needed most, and who has believed in the possibility of a better world. Together, we are proof that change is possible, and that it starts with us." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing throughout the auditorium. As Clara stepped off the stage, she was greeted by hugs and congratulations from loved ones. But what touched her most was seeing the pride in Michael's eyes. He had been her rock through every high and low, and she knew none of this would have been possible without him. In the years that followed, Clara continued to advocate for kindness and equality, always finding new ways to inspire others. She traveled the world, sharing her story and learning from the stories of others. She mentored young activists, encouraging them to use their voices for good. And she never stopped believing in the power of simple acts of compassion to transform lives, including her own. Through it all, Clara remained the same humble, kind-hearted woman she had always been. She wore her favorite blue dress to meetings, laughed freely with friends, and cherished quiet moments with Michael. Her journey had taught her that true worth comes not from wealth or status, but from the love and respect we give to others and to ourselves. And so, Clara's story became more than just a tale of triumph over adversity. It became a legacy of hope, reminding future generations that even in the face of hardship, kindness and courage could light the path toward a brighter, fairer world. With Michael by her side and a community of supporters behind her, Clara proved that one person truly could make a difference, and that together, anything was possible.